O eternal and almighty God, from whom all power and wisdom come, we are assembled here before thee to frame such laws as may tend to the welfare and prosperity of our province. Grant, O merciful God, we pray thee, that we may desire only that which is in accordance with thy will, that we may seek it with wisdom and know it with certainty and accomplish it perfectly. For the glory and honor of thy name and for the welfare of all our people. Amen. We acknowledge we are gathered on Treaty 1 territory and that Manitoba is located on the treaty territories and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Anishinaabe, Dakota Oete, Dene Sulene, and Neothoag nations. We acknowledge Manitoba is located on the homeland of the Red River Métis. We acknowledge northern Manitoba includes lands that were and are the ancestral lands of the Inuit. We respect the spirit and intent of treaties and treaty making and remain committed to working in partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. Please be seated. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Miigwech, Honourable Speaker. Pursuant to Rule 34(7), I am announcing the private member's resolution to be considered on the next Tuesday of private member's business will be one put forward by the Honourable Member for Tuxedo. The title of the resolution is A Better Future for Healthcare in Manitoba.
It has been announced that pursuant to Rule 34(7) that the private member's resolution to be considered on the next Tuesday of private member's business will be the one put forward by the Honourable Member for Tuxedo. The title of the resolution is A Better Future for Healthcare in Manitoba. Orders of the day, private member's business. Now, as previously announced, the Honourable Member for Fort Garry has indicated that Bill number 210, the Homeowner Protection and Unsolicited Purchase Offers Act, will be their selected bill for this session, and that the question will be put on second reading of this bill this morning at 10:55 a.m. Accordingly, I will now recognize the Honourable Member for Fort Garry to move the second reading motion to begin his debate. The Honourable Member for Fort Garry.
I move that Bill 210, the Homeowners Protection from Unsolicited Purchases Offers Act, Loi sur la protection des propriétaires contre l'offre d'achat sans sollicitaire, be now read a second time and referred to a committee of this House.
Been moved by the Honourable Member for Fort Garry that Bill number 210, the Homeowner Protection and Unsolicited Purchase Offers Act, be now read a second time and be referred to a committee of this House. The Honourable Member for Fort Garry.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The impetus for this bill came from canvassing in my West Fort Garry neighbourhood. It's a neighbourhood that's very much in transition. These are 60-year-old homes, some of the first suburban homes in Winnipeg. They have some of the original owners from that neighborhood that still occupy those homes. Many of them are widows living alone in a single family home on a very large lot. The neighborhood is transitioning, and a lot of young people are moving into it with young families. And when the original homeowners bought these homes, they were a fraction of what they cost today. In fact, some of these homes are now 10 to 15 times what these homeowners originally had purchased the home for. And of course, many of these homes are now mortgage-free. Many of the homeowners are seniors, including many in their 80s. Some are in poor health. Some are facing some very significant financial difficulties or having hard times maintaining their home. The neighborhood, highly desirable. It's next to a rapid transit station. It's gentrifying at a very rapid pace. And in South Winnipeg, it's probably one of the last affordable areas for family homes where young families can actually purchase a family house. So the lots are extremely valuable, and there's a business practice that's been going on in this area where the homes are getting torn down and two modern tall homes are being built on the same lot, which is a huge economic windfall for the developers. And what I saw in this neighborhood, which was deeply concerning, and I saw for it myself, you would have these young, very aggressive salespeople who would be going door to door, knocking on the doors of these homes of these seniors and offering to buy their homes unsolicited for cash. In fact, I remember during the election, I was in the backyard talking to one of my constituents, and this young salesperson comes into the backyard, interrupts the conversation I'm having with the constituent, and makes an offer on the house in front of me. And I was talking to a senior. She was exasperated, and out of frustration, she said, "You know what, you were here last week. The answer was no last week. It's still no." And she proceeded to tell me that this was a regular occurrence in the neighborhood where they were getting constantly bombarded, constantly solicited, and no didn't mean no, and they would be back again. I then went back out onto the street and I continued to knock on doors, and I could see these young guys were about half a dozen doors ahead of me, and they were going door to door. And when I spoke to the neighbors in this neighborhood, they said this happened all the time, and to the point where they felt harassed. So this is not just happening in West Fork area, it's happening in other parts of my riding. It's in fact happening all over the city of Winnipeg, and I imagine it's all over Manitoba. If you ever see the signs on hydro poles that we buy houses for cash, that's what this is. And essentially, it's a practice called real estate wholesaling or paper flipping, and it's a get-rich-quick scheme. It's one of those things that you'll have a Saturday afternoon seminar at an airport hotel where somebody comes in and teaches how, to make $1 million really quickly. Well, this is the method that they're teaching, and then after one of these seminars, you see an explosion, at least in Fork area and Winnipeg, of these would-be entrepreneurs who go out there trying to hustle. So basically, the original homeowners are aging out. They may live alone, they may be widows, and they may be quite vulnerable and unsophisticated. They don't know how much their property is worth. And what happens in these transactions is a high degree of pressure sales being used to the point of harassment. And they're being offered homes at well below market prices. And of course, the person had paid off the house years ago, and so it seems like a big number, but they don't know that because they don't employ a realtor. In fact, part of the sales pitch for this is don't use a realtor. We will give you cash, and you will save money by not using a realtor. Well, the thing is with a realtor, realtors protect the seller because they can tell you what your actual house is worth and whether you're being taken advantage of. So they provide valuable information to Manitobans and a valuable service that needs to be recognized. So the homeowner may not be sophisticated, they may not understand their rights or the true value of their home, and essentially they get taken advantage of, and then they sell the house to one of these resale wholesalers, and here's the troubling part about it. They don't even take possession of the house. They in turn sell it to a builder or another company before their original sale is done, flipping the house and taking the profit from offering a low asking price. And another company will then in turn go build on that lot. So when I was researching this became such a significant issue in Manitoba that the Securities Commission had to issue a fraud alert several years ago because they got so many complaints from Manitobans about this issue. And looking into the matter further, it's kind of an odd situation because our consumer protection laws protect buyers. They don't protect sellers. There is a gap in the law where you potentially, as a seller, can be taken advantage of, and this law would fill that gap. So what does this bill do? It provides protections for homeowners from receiving unsolicited purchase offers, and it gives them the tools to stop being harassed. So no means no. If you don't want to have this unwanted attention, you can notify these people and they will be required by law to leave you alone. It also requires, if you do enter into a sale with one of these companies, they have to provide you consumer protection information as a condition of sale, so that this vulnerable person can know what their rights are and how they can protect themselves. It also requires the protection of the homeowner through the representation of an independent real estate agent who is bound by an ethical code of conduct, and any misconduct can be dealt with by the profession. And of course, the real estate agent will be there to provide market value information and ensure that the seller is protected during the transaction. And this bill requires that the purchaser pay for the fees of the independent real estate broker in these circumstances. And finally, it also allows for a cooling off period, given that there's high pressure sales tax here. You can cancel any of these deals within 30 days. If Manitoba passed this bill, it would be groundbreaking. It would be the first jurisdiction in Canada that protected vulnerable homeowners from these type of tactics. There have been laws put in place in Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Oklahoma, but this would be the very first one in Canada. So I look forward to the debate on this matter. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
So a question period of up to 10 minutes will be held. Questions may be addressed to the sponsoring member by any member in the following sequence. First question to be asked by a member from another party. This is to be followed by a rotation between the parties. Each independent member may ask one question, and no question or answer shall exceed 45 seconds. The floor is now open for questions. The honourable member for Borderland.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I thank the member for Fort Garry for bringing this piece of legislation forward and for representing his constituents. I know he talked a little bit about, anecdotally, about witnessing these unsolicited offers being made and talked about his constituents feeling harassed, but I'm wondering if he could perhaps talk a little bit more about whether he has any empirical evidence or quantitative data, whether he can demonstrate that this is something that happens across Manitoba. If he could perhaps talk a little bit more about that.
The honourable member for Fort Garry.
No, I thank you for that question. Probably the greatest source of information for this is the Manitoba Securities Commission. I have met with them and discussed this. I've actually requested that they conduct an investigation. But again, this predates me bringing this bill. A number of years ago, there was so many complaints to the Manitoba Securities Commission that they issued a public fraud alert in relation to this practice. So this is very much on the radar of the Manitoba government. The issue is, until now, there hasn't been any sort of political will to actually find a legislative solution to this issue.
The Honourable Minister of Sport, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question to the member opposite is, how will the provisions of this bill be enforced?
The Honourable Member for Fort Garry.
Yeah, so basically, it's contract law, and this would require a number of obligations on the part of people who enter into this contract. And if you violate those obligations, you could be taken to court and the sale could be found to be null and void. In addition, the requirement to have a real estate agent represent you at the buyer's expense also protects the seller, and that real estate agent is bound by an ethical code of conduct. If they do something that is not in the interests of the seller, they can be brought before their own professional body and disciplined. And so that can give the member opposite the comfort knowing...
Member's time has expired. The Honourable Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question is for the member for Fort Garry. My question is, Were homeowners and home buyers equally consulted in the drafting of this bill? As we know, home buyers, independent home buyers have been around as part of the real estate landscape for many, many years, and I'm just wondering if they've also been consulted equally to the homeowners.
The honourable member for Fort Garry.
Well, I wouldn't say equally, because when I'm knocking on doors in a neighborhood, I'm obviously talking to far more homeowners who are dealing with this problem. But I have met with the Manitoba Real Estate Association. I have met with the Manitoba Builders Association. I have met with a real estate wholesaling company, one of these that we buy houses company, and heard their perspective from it. And of course, I have met with the Manitoba Securities Commission, who has been receiving these complaints, and of course, my own constituents who tell me firsthand their experiences in relation to this.
The Honourable Minister, Sport, Culture, Heritage.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thank you again for those responses. But my question for the member opposite is, how does this bill support homeowners with the potentially expensive proposition of the services of a realtor?
Honourable member for Fort Garry.
Okay, so I'll answer that question again. So the homeowner isn't paying for the real estate agent. It is an obligation that if you enter into an unsolicited sale, that the purchaser will have to pay for an independent real estate agent at their expense in order to protect the seller of that property. So the seller of that property is not out any money at all for this service. That will be part of the costs associated to the unsolicited buyer who's engaging in this practice.
No further. The honourable member for Borderland.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I wonder if the member for Fort Garry could talk about how he arrived at the decision to mandate realtor involvement.
Honourable member for Fort Garry.
In researching this bill, I was looking at some of the examples in the United States, and what they were forcing people to do there is that if you engaged in this type of business model, you were forced to go get a real estate license, even if you weren't normally in sort of that type of business, in order that you would be governed by an ethical professional code and a professional body that could discipline you. I didn't think we needed to go that far in Canada. I thought that given that we already have real estate professionals that do this kind of work who are subject to an ethical professional code of conduct, simply having them involved in the transaction is an extra layer of protection for home sellers.
The Honourable Minister of Labour and Immigration.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question is regarding the disclosure statement in the member's bill, proposed bill, about the disclosure statement not being necessarily a proper form similar to the Condominium Act that is used there. That would then be like a statutory declaration that would be signed by both parties. Is the member opposite willing to talk a little bit about the disclosure statement in his proposed bill?
The honourable member for Fort Garry.
Again, because oftentimes there's information and power imbalance between the transacting parties, one of the abuses of this type of business model is to take advantage of somebody who doesn't have information about their legal rights or about what protections they have under law in relation to these type of commercial transactions. So the whole point of forcing that disclosure gives that potential seller information that they wouldn't have otherwise, and it should give them notice about how serious this is, how many options that they have, and that they don't have to feel pressured, and that they have some choices to make to
Member's
protect
time
themselves.
has expired. The honourable member for Lakeside.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the member for Fort Garry for bringing this bill forward to offer some protection to the vulnerable citizens of the province. But Did you rely on any research or precedent to determine that 30 days is the appropriate time frame for homeowners to reconsider their decision to sell? Or did you consider longer or shorter windows?
Honorable member for Fort Garry.
Again, I looked at some examples in the United States where they had these sort of cooling off periods, and I had extensive discussions with legislative counsel about what would be a fair time frame so that somebody who's feeling pressured to get into this, they have enough time to sort of realize an error and get out, but not so long that if it is a valid commercial transaction, that it doesn't disrupt normal economic flow. So 30 days seem like a good balance. Certainly, you know, I would be open to discussion on the exact number of days, but that's how we landed at 30 days.
The Honorable Minister of Sport, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. My question for the member opposite, we have a lot of Manitobans who want to get into the home ownership realm. How does this bill support Manitobans who want to become homeowners?
The Honorable Member for Fort Garry.
One of the problems that we have with the affordable housing crisis is that our properties are not homes, they're assets, and they're being financialized. And this type of speculative home buying raises the price of homes for everyone, and it makes things more expensive for everyone and less affordable for everyone. These homes are being flipped for profit, and that profit is getting added to the value of the house, and the next owner has to pay for it, and the next owner, and the next owner, and you're seeing these skyrocketing home prices. By putting a law in place to prevent house flipping and speculation, it will ultimately make all homes more affordable.
The Honorable Member for Borderland.
I wonder if the member for Fort Garry could talk about whether or not his bill differentiates between individuals who may be looking to make an unsolicited offer on a home, and firms, or these businesses that go about and make it their business to make unsolicited offers. Wondering if you could perhaps talk a little bit more about that.
The Honorable Member for Fort Garry.
The issue here is the sort of predatory business practice, and it doesn't matter whether it's an individual or a corporation that's doing it. And the harm that this bill is trying to prevent is that, and it doesn't make a difference between whether it's a corporation doing it or whether it's an individual.
The time for questions has expired. The floor is now open for debate. The Honorable Minister of Sport, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise today to maybe actually put words on the record on owning a home in Manitoba and what our government is doing to be able to support homeowners in Manitoba. And we know that investing in families and neighborhoods, we are helping Manitobans raise a healthy family and safe communities. For 7.5 years, the failed PC government raised costs for Manitoba families, limiting their economic freedom. With our new approach, we're building more housing and supporting Manitoba's freedom to afford a home. Our NDP government is putting in the work to make life more affordable for Manitobans. One of the ways that we are doing that is by bringing in the $1,500 homeowners affordability tax credit to help Manitoba homeowners save money. Our new tax credit is removing the regressive tax scheme that the failed PC government put into place, which saw millions of dollars benefit out-of-province billionaires. By eliminating this scheme, 84% of Manitoba homeowners will have lower costs, providing more relief for them after years of rising costs under the Stephenson government. This tax credit will help Manitobans save money on their mortgage payments. This tax credit will also...
Please. I'd ask the member to please make his comments relevant to the bill that's before us. The Honourable Member for the Honourable Minister of Sport, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you very much for that reminder, Honourable Speaker. And when we talk about owning a home, of course, we're talking about new owners wanting to get into the market. And what does that mean in terms of their relationship with buyers, sellers, and all of those different types of interactions. And of course, buying a home and owning a home is relevant to the real estate market here. And we've made significant investments into social and affordable housing. By lessening the need for people to get into homes, we know that we are making a difference in our communities. And I think that's what the spirit of this bill is also touching upon. And we had a population in Manitoba left to their own devices and what it meant of their housing stock, and allowed this speculativeness to get out of control. With our new approach, we're getting more Manitobans into housing so they can call it home. 1 year into being the government Manitobans voted for, we've supported over 1,200 Manitobans with housing, including 77 individuals who needed safe and appropriate housing to be discharged from hospitals so they can receive appropriate follow-up care or live in space that met their health and accessibility needs. More than 120 survivors of gender-based violence who needed a safe place to call home were connected to Manitoba Housing. And of course, keeping these speculators out of the market could contribute to more stock being available. We had 725 people experiencing homelessness or precarious housing connected to Manitoba Housing. More than 120 people received support from Housing First teams, which help people access housing and supports to ensure they can maintain their housing over the long term. More than 30 seniors had been residing in an emergency shelter, and nearly 130 people who were connected with housing across Manitoba in Dauphin, Brandon, Portage la Prairie, and Winnipeg from new initiatives launched last winter. We are supporting housing. We are supporting people who are looking to get into homes. We're launching housing projects in Dauphin and Winnipeg and will continue to support them. Our team is making investments to repair and upgrade existing housing stock rather than selling it like the PCs did. So when we continue to talking about the real estate market, it is a very new...
Order, please. I would remind the minister to please keep his comments relevant to the bill and maybe not make so many political statements about things that his government is doing. Order, please. The Honourable Minister of Sport, Culture and Heritage.
Well, and obviously when we're talking about any bill on real estate, we have to talk about what's happening in this province. And maybe they want us to continue to go off of our record and the investments that we've been making in real estate in this province. So we know that when we create an environment where people can actually own homes, these types of practices start to go away. Alors, je vais continuer en français. Notre gouvernement est néo-démocrate, a effectué des investissements significatifs dans le logement social et abordable. En investissant dans les familles et quartiers, nous aidons le plus grand nombre de Manitobains à élever une famille en santé dans les communautés plus sûres. Pendant 7 ans et demi, les communautés ont été laissées et à elles-mêmes, tandis que le gouvernement PC défaillant a vendu le parc de logements sociaux. Avec notre nouvelle approche, nous aidons un plus grand nombre de Manitobains à accéder à des logements qu'ils peuvent appeler chez eux. 1 an après être devenu gouvernement pour lequel les Manitobains ont voté, nous avons soutenu plus de 1200 Manitobains avec un logement. Manitobans, no matter where they live and how much they make, deserve a freedom to have a safe place to live. Fulfilling this commitment means we need to support affordable housing for women, children, and 2S LGBTQIA+. And that means supporting homeowners to have the ability to sell their homes in a fair market. We've invested in supports for Manitobans vulnerable to gender-based violence, including women, children, and 2S LGBTQ+ people so they can have a safe place to call home. I just wanted to conclude my remarks by thanking the member from Fort Garry for bringing bills forward so that we can have an active discussion on home ownership here in the province. J'aimerais aussi remercier mes collègues pour être attentifs en français ainsi que l'anglais. Et on ne devrait pas se sentir moins pour avoir parlé dans notre langue maternelle. And although it is a private member's bill, I think I would caution the members opposite for making me choose which language I use, because my understanding that in this chamber, French and English are both accepted. Merci.
The honourable member for Borderland.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. It's good to be here this morning and to have the opportunity to put a few words on Bill 210, the Homeowner Protection from Unsolicited Purchase Offers Act. And as I said in the question and answer period, I thank the member for Fort Garry for bringing this piece of legislation forward, and I am happy that he is continuing to be in this chamber and be an active participant in the legislative process here. And I think he's a member who has a lot to say, and so I again thank him for his contribution to the debate this morning, and in particular for his legislation on this issue, which I have to be honest, I haven't heard a lot about in my area. But that doesn't mean that perhaps that it isn't taking place, and I think it's something worth talking about. So I appreciate the opportunity to put a few words on Bill 210 this morning. As the member for Fort Garry stated, the bill allows homeowners to issue written notice to anyone making unsolicited offers, requesting that such offers cease. I think that's perhaps a positive aspect of the bill. There's got to be some protection for homeowners who just simply want to be free of harassment, continual harassment by firms or corporations or those making unsolicited offers. I think perhaps a sticking point is the requirement of realtor representation, that homeowners, the bill requires that homeowners must be represented by a realtor when selling their property in response to an unsolicited offer. I understand the intent, which is certainly valid, is that you don't want to overburden sellers, and so the purchaser is made responsible for reimbursing realtors' fees, and of course realtors' fees can be very substantial. And so I think typically they're 3.5% to 4.5% in Manitoba, and on a, you can do the math on a $200,000 home or $250,000 home, you know, that's $10,000 plus GST. So that is a substantial amount that the purchaser is responsible for. And the bill also mandates that purchasers provide a disclosure statement to homeowners detailing the assessed value of the home and the homeowner's rights, which again I think is a fair intention of the bill, and it includes the right to cancel the sale within 30 days after the agreement is signed. And we of course know that this piece of legislation comes at a time when the real estate market across Canada, when housing is in short supply, and home values are quite inflated. I won't pretend I'm an expert on whether you know, there is a housing bubble in Manitoba or in Canada, but we know that there is significant demand for homes, and I know in my area as well, there's been so much growth, and there are hundreds of people that have applied for permits in particular communities. I won't name them, but there is significant demand to build homes and significant demand for housing in this country and in this province. And so, of course, you know, that has resulted in perhaps some less scrupulous folks taking advantage of the vulnerable. Whether they're always approaching exclusively the vulnerable, I can't say, but it would be you know, our seniors and those perhaps who are hard up for cash or in a tough moment, or maybe they're not in the right headspace, and you know, a smooth talking solicitor comes to them and makes an offer and tries to effectively swindle them out of their home, you know, that's a practice that is disturbing and should not be happening. And so, as the member for Fort Garry said, there's the principle of buyer beware in Manitoba, but there historically haven't been many protections for sellers. So I just think, though, that there's a couple of, again, I touched on the what I termed, you know, possibly the sticking point in this bill, which is the requirement for realtor representation. And the reason I think that, you know, there may be some unintended consequences. I did ask the member during question and answer whether the bill differentiates between individuals and, you know, firms or corporations, because I think there may be some unintended consequences. And I can think of, you know, speaking from experience, that, you know, there are situations where someone within your family may make what I guess would be defined as an unsolicited offer. I think the term is fairly clear. I didn't see a definition for it. It may be in the bill, but I fortunately didn't have an opportunity to ask the member to perhaps define that more clearly and explicitly. But there may be unintended consequences when you have a family member or someone within your friend circle or a neighbor or someone you know from work, and you get together, and I've, you know, heard of this happening, and where someone that you know, and they're not out to harass you necessarily, they're not part of a firm that is, they don't make a living off of exploiting seniors and vulnerable people, but they make an unsolicited offer, and this bill would require then that they have that they follow all the legal proceedings that this piece of legislation sets out, including realtor representation, which, as I pointed out earlier, can be very expensive, incredibly expensive. So, you know, you pay that along with the land transfer tax and everything else. Home ownership is very expensive. So, I just think that is perhaps an area that could be explored further, and could be addressed. Again, as with many things, and I said this last week in debate as well, and you know, it's in our nature as legislators to bring forward legislation and to want to pass legislation. My own philosophy as a legislator is I take from the former U.S. President Calvin Coolidge, who wrote to his father and said that it is better to kill a bad bill than to pass a good one. And so my philosophy is that, you know, rather than constantly passing legislation and enabling regulators to grow that body of regulations that bears down on Manitoba businesses and individuals and families, taxpayers, that I take a minimalist approach, and I believe in rolling legislation back. So when I read a bill like this, which I think is well intended and speaks to a problem that I think the member for Fort Garry very clearly laid out, that is happening in the province, I'm concerned about the unintended consequences on private sales, on private trades between friends, between family members, between individuals that know each other from work or live in the same neighborhood, and they want to make a trade, and they both agree to it. And whether it's fair, it's up to them to determine that. So I think that, again, as I said, the devil is in the details. I think that's an area of concern for myself. And the minister across the way in question period asked as well about what does enforcement look like. You know, what mechanisms are in place, and I think that is something as well that I think could be afforded further discussion. So, with that, Honourable Speaker, I just want to say I thank the member for Fort Garry. Home ownership is a dream that many Canadians, many Manitobans aspire to. I think it's something that we should, as government, do everything we can to create an environment where young families can own homes. You know, and I think that that's important. That ownership of private property, owning your own home, is so important and does so much to increase one's confidence. So, with that, thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The Honourable Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, for the opportunity to speak to the private member's Bill 210 brought forward by the member for Fort Garry this morning. As a business owner, this is something that I feel passionate about speaking on this morning. With home ownership being harder and harder to achieve by young people specifically, and by all Manitobans day after day, creating a stronger and stronger market by the trade and cost of inflation. The situation with the economy that we're in today, with steep rises in inflation, has brought us to the point of such competition in the market that we're seeing all sorts of different unique approaches to home trading, and that's what I'd assume has spurred on this bill today by the member for Fort Garry, seeing that unsolicited deals and individuals approaching homeowners to purchase their properties, their homes, sometimes for less than market value, taking advantage of the vulnerability of many homeowners that we have in the market. The concern is, from my standpoint, representing a constituency of rapid growth, having those same challenges as the rest of populated Manitoba, where home ownership is further and further out of reach. My concern is adding another level of government oversight into the free market is a slippery slope that I'm greatly concerned about. This now forces the involvement of a realtor, a real estate agency, in the purchase of property which is at a higher demand than there is supply. At what point do you allow the private market to dictate and control where the market lies? In my opinion, there is very little opportunity for anyone to take advantage of a homeowner in today's market. If we were in a complete housing collapse and people were desperate of liquidating homes, I think that it would be a place where potentially, not that I would support it even at that point, but potentially then there being a place for government involvement when people out of desperation to liquidate an asset are being taken advantage of their vulnerability. I could see some purpose. In today's housing market, the demand is strong. It far outpaces and exceeds the supply in the marketplace. Therefore, I think we need to give the onus onto the homeowner to allow for their own responsibility in the decisions that they make with their asset, and adding another level of government oversight and another expense onto whether it be the purchaser or the homeowner. When you add an extra cost, into a layer of the marketplace, it gets passed on. So, so now, you know, exactly what we're trying to avoid in the intent of this bill, and I appreciate the member bringing it forward with good intentions of protecting homeowners and those vulnerable in the marketplace. I think it may do the exact opposite. We're looking for housing affordability for all Manitobans, and this further adds to inflation. So inflation is driven by external factors and external costs being brought onto the market. This would be no different. Their own homeowners who may decide to build a relationship with someone who is willing to ease their transaction by making a cash offer. I know that when we look in our backyards, when we look down our streets, many of the homes that we see are are family homes that will go on to raise another family and provide the shelter and security for another generation and another family. But the marketplace is complex. So there are houses in communities that are needing to be reestablished and redeveloped. There are homes that currently are homes for individuals that are in a poor state of condition, and these homes are most suitable for an investor that's looking at revitalizing that neighborhood. We have a number of neighborhoods in the city of Winnipeg and other cities and communities, whether those are large cities or small towns, which need revitalization. The owners, I've had firsthand experience where the owners of these homes are frustrated with a sale that could be dragged on for months because of the advice of a realtor who is looking at all the safeguards in place for the purchaser. And some of these examples are things in rural communities like water sampling of a well and foundation inspections and general condition home inspection, ventilation system certificates. And these potentially are homes that will be repurposed. These are communities that need revitalizations, and potentially they are an investment for a change of purpose in those neighborhoods. I'm looking at both sides of this scenario that we may have homeowners that now will be limited in their ability of sale, and that process can now become convoluted. They own the property, they want to make a quick, easy sale, get out of that property. They know that the property is in poor condition, and a cash offer for a potential repurpose is what they're looking at. This type of easy flow in the marketplace allows for the free market to dictate what is done. Without setting up more roadblocks and barricades, it'll allow for the investor to purchase these properties, to make the investments quicker and simpler into rebuilding those communities. Not saying that that is the intent of this bill. I'm fully convinced that the member brought this bill forward with good intention, seeing a developed prosperous neighborhood and community having members who are uncomfortable by the unsolicited offers from potential investors or people who are looking at this with ill intent. But I would just like to say that, we, myself specifically, the communities that I represent, promote free enterprise and freedom within the marketplace to buy and sell assets how we see best fit for our personal positions. Thank you.
The honourable member for Lakeside.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and once again, I want to thank the member for Fort Garry for bringing this bill forward to protect the vulnerable, the uneducated on what maybe land values and properties can be. I know there certainly is stuff going on that the member had mentioned that may seem maybe a little bit unethical as far as soliciting goes, and we certainly don't want to see our seniors taken advantage of or that are enjoying their last years of their home, maybe not aware of what it's worth, maybe don't have family or legal representation to give them the proper advice. So I certainly understand the intent of the member's bill that he's brought forward here, and I can appreciate the reasons for it, for sure. I think back out in the rural areas where we are, we quite often have the neighbor or the neighboring farmer come by and offer to purchase a piece of property or some farmland, and most of those deals are made neighbor to neighbor with a lot of trust and knowing and being very well educated as rural people of what farmland may be worth, what farm acreages, small acreages in the country are worth, and we see that growing in the last short number of years. The values of these properties, and they're growing and growing, and there's certainly people that are out there wanting to take advantage of that, and most of us want to see the homeowner be the one that takes the advantage of that, or the landowner. So that would be my only concern with this bill is our neighboring people working together to do these transactions on their own without the involvement of any real estate broker. I'll speak from my own experience, on the farm.
Order, please. In accordance with Rule 25, and as previously announced, I'm interrupting debate to put the question on the honourable member for Fort Garry's selected bill. The question before the House then is second reading of Bill 210, the Homeowner Protection from Unsolicited Purchase Offers Act. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? No. I hear a no. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Nay. The nays have it. Therefore, the motion is accordingly defeated. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Which, Honourable Speaker, can you canvass the House to see if we can call it 11?
Is there leave to call it 11 o'clock? Agreed and so ordered. The hour now being 11 o'clock, it's time for second reading of selected bill. My mistake, I've got to turn the page over every now and again. Private members' resolution now is resolution number 23, calling on the provincial government to cancel the gas tax holiday extension and bring in real solutions for cost of living crisis, brought forward by the honourable member for Fort Garry. The honourable member for Fort Garry.
Thank you. I move, therefore be it resolved that the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba urge the provincial government to immediately cancel the gas tax holiday and redirect the money for real costs of living solutions for Manitoba.
So before I proceed, I just need to request the House for leave to enter the resolution as printed. Is there leave? Agreed and so ordered. Been moved by the honourable member for Fort Garry that calling that therefore be it resolved that the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba urge the provincial government to immediately cancel the gas tax holiday and redirect that money for real cost of living solutions for Manitobans. The honourable member for Fort Garry.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Manitoba is in the midst of a cost of living crisis. The biggest drivers of the crisis, with the biggest impacts on Manitobans, is the cost of housing and the cost of groceries. The latest Canada Food Price Report, the overall rate of food inflation in Manitoba year over year is 5.7%. Manitobans didn't get a 5.7% cost of living increase in the past year. Food bank use has skyrocketed in Manitoba. People are spending less on groceries than years past, and they're paying more. They can only afford to buy less food for their families. At the same time, grocery store chains are seeing record profits. When we look at the government's response, it's been absent, missing in action. There is no policy in the past year to address affordability of groceries. In fact, the Premier, the only policy he's pointed to was the gas tax holiday, who he promised would lower grocery prices, and we know that certainly didn't happen. Now, in relation to rents, Manitoba has the second fastest growing rents in the country. And of course, that seems like a shocking statistic because we have rent control here in Manitoba. But we know that there's a very large loophole in our laws, and that's of course the above guideline rent increases, where a landlord can do some minor cosmetic renovations and apply for above guideline rent increases. In opposition, it was discovered 100% of these applications were being approved. The average rent increase was between about 9% above guidelines, some as high as 126% in a year. Large landlords are able to get around rent control guidelines by this loophole. And long-term tenants have been forced to move out of their homes, a process known as renovictions. Now, this isn't a small problem. 40% of Manitobans rent, and in Fort Garry, that number is as high as 50%. So again, has there been a response from this government? No, there hasn't. In fact, in opposition, they drafted a bill that would have closed that renoviction loophole. Now, the government does have a House bill before the House. It was tabled on May 23rd. It's had first reading. It has not been a selected bill, and it has not been called for second reading. It is most likely, given the 6 days or so that we have left, will die on the order paper. And I wonder out loud if that bill is going to come back. So the government has a solution in place, but is refusing to actually bring it forward. And the question, of course, is why? So we have an affordable housing crisis in Manitoba. We've seen a massive influx of newcomers in Manitoba, including 30,000 Ukrainians and over and above the 15 or 20,000 newcomers that come to Manitoba each every year. We've seen large increases in temporary foreign workers and international students. And I welcome them all. Our province is a province built on immigration. We need more. But that being said, there needs to be a response from the government to establish housing so that those that come here have some place to live. And of course, it's an affordability housing crisis, meaning that even the housing that we do have costs Manitobans more than 30% of their income in a month. Speaking with constituents, I had a number of young couples that I met that were renting, that wanted to start families, that wanted to buy a home, and they just simply couldn't afford the down payment. Block over, I would speak to a senior who is a widow living alone in a large single-family house. It's paid off, and they don't need a house that big. They don't want a house that big, but they cannot afford rental property in the area that would be less than the current cost of them living in a house. So we have that house that that young couple could move into, but can't because we have nowhere for that senior to transition into affordable housing. So again, what's been this government's response? There hasn't been. So there's no co-op housing strategy for young families or seniors. There's no emphasis to build non-market housing. And of course, the government cut rent assist program. And when it was shamed into putting more money into it, a meager $1.2 million were added in with no commitment to add more once that expires. And of course, we've seen this government privatize affordable housing with a real estate investment trust handed over to the corporate business community. We're talking about a tax shelter and an investment vehicle for $10 million, which the province will not recover any of that money, going to private for-profit businesses in order to make money instead of going to Manitobans to actually provide affordable rents. And of course, that brings us to the gas tax holiday. This is the magic bullet that the Premier uses for all things affordable in Manitoba. It is going to cost Manitobans $340 million of borrowed money, money that they don't have, money that's going to cost tens of millions of dollars in interest to repay. And it doesn't help the majority of Manitobans. It doesn't help Manitobans who don't drive. The vast majority of that money, $109 million, will go to businesses and corporations with very little going to Manitobans. So we see that this is basically another form of corporate welfare. It's a tax cut that goes to wealthy Manitobans. And the average Manitoban who will benefit from it will receive $15 per month in savings, which isn't nothing, but considering what that money could do and how many affordable units or how we could make life more affordable through subsidized childcare spaces and other alternatives, we can see that it's a lost opportunity. The other issue with the gas tax holiday is it's not being monitored. So we don't actually know if savings are being passed on to Manitobans. Over the past year, the price of gas has skyrocketed. It's bounced around. We don't know if all 14 cents is actually getting to Manitobans or if they're only getting 2 or 3 cents of tax savings and the rest are being fed into gas company profits. This government didn't do anything to monitor it, and we don't know whether or not Manitobans are actually reaping any kind of benefit. So what could we pay for this money? Well, we have a shortage of childcare spaces. And we've seen communities crowdfund to open up new spots, which means that only wealthy communities that have the resources to fundraise will actually get childcare. Low-income communities can't do that, and they simply go without. And this is money that could create thousands of new spots. $340 million could build 8 new public schools. We wouldn't have to have children going to school in a hallway. $340 million could pay for free transit for everyone in Winnipeg, Brandon, Thompson, and Selkirk for multiple years. That helps everyone in those cities, not a handful of large SUV drivers. And of course, bus passes in Winnipeg cost about $1,200 a year. That would make a real difference in people's lives. Instead of saving $150 on gas, you'd actually save $1,200 in transit fees. That is a huge difference to Manitoba. And of course, despite the gas tax holiday, transit has been going up and up every single year, including this year as well. And so we can help a few people who are already very wealthy with the tax gas holiday, or we can help everybody by using that money and making real investments in Manitobans. The other side of a cost of living crisis, of course, that the Premier doesn't want to talk about and will not mention it, is a living wage. You can combat the cost of living crisis if wages are on the rise. And of course, this Premier doesn't support a living wage. He's adopted many of the policies of the previous government. And no Manitoban, I think he used to say, I don't think he says it anymore, no Manitoban should work a full-time job and live in poverty. Now, so things have changed very much over there. 171,000 Manitobans earn less than a living wage. And they're disproportionately women and disproportionately newcomers. About 40% of them have young children at home, many who can't work full-time because we don't have the childcare spaces for them to go. Paying a living wage to 171,000 Manitobans would do more to eliminate child poverty than any and all of the gas tax holiday strategies combined. So Manitobans voted for change. They're done with austerity. They're done with government picking fights with Manitoba workers. They want public services that will be there for their families. They want an economy that works for all Manitobans, and it's fair to all Manitobans, not just the very wealthy. And they want one Manitoba. Instead, they got this. They got the third term of the Pallister government. But it's not too late. The Premier can drop the empty performative politics. He can roll up his sleeves and start to work for all Manitobans. You know, like one Manitoba. Thank you.
Before I start the question period, I'll just remind all members that we will recess at 11:56 due to moving up the 11 o'clock hour. So a question period now of up to 10 minutes will be held, and questions may be addressed in the following sequence. First question may be asked by a member from another party. Any subsequent questions must follow a rotation between parties. Each independent member may ask one question, and no question or answer shall exceed 45 seconds. The floor is now open for questions. The honourable member for Selkirk.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I want to thank the member for bringing this resolution forward. What permanent measures should be implemented to assure affordability for all Manitobans?
The honourable member for Fort Garry.
Well, there's a number of things we can do. We need to invest in non-market housing. We have to stop treating housing as a financial asset and treat it as a human right, and that means building homes for people where less than 30% of their income actually goes to either rent or a mortgage, and other countries are able to do that. That would be a huge benefit to Manitobans. And of course, the other big benefit would be to do what we do with milk prices in Manitoba by regulating other staples. In this cost of living crisis, milk has remained affordable where everything else hasn't.
The honourable member for St. Boniface.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question for the member is, can he explain how Manitoba's low inflation, thanks to the fuel tax holiday, is something he doesn't support?
Honourable member for Fort Garry.
The question's disingenuous because, of course, when you measure inflation, it is a list, a basket of goods, and if you change one of the items on the list, it'll affect that. But if you go outside of this bubble into the streets of Winnipeg and you ask people, since the gas tax holiday come in, are you feeling flush? Are you feeling like you're doing well? They're going to tell you no, and they'd be insulted by that question from the member opposite because it just shows a lack of being aware and out of touch. And this government's only been in power for a year, and to be that unaware of what Manitobans is facing is truly troubling.
The honourable member for Portage-La Prairie.
Honourable Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much to the member from Fort Garry. One of the questions I have for you is, or one of the questions I have is, how much infrastructure do you believe has been affected by this lack of gas tax money that we've had here? I know in my municipality, we've been affected tremendously by roads not being repaired. Could you help me with that, please?
Honourable member for Fort Garry.
Yeah, that's a really excellent question because there's actually a direct relationship between the cuts for infrastructure and the gas tax holiday. It's over $250 million that have been cut from the infrastructure budget. Well, the gas tax holiday is $340 million. So you could not only cover off all that infrastructure, you could even add more. And the whole point of a gas tax is a user pay. If you use the roads, you're going to wear down the roads. You got to pay to fix the roads, so you got to pay your fair share.
The honourable member for St. Boniface.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question for the member is, when was the last time he paid nearly $2 per litre for gas?
The honourable member for Fort Garry.
The issue for Manitobans is being able to afford groceries. The issue for Manitobans is be able to pay their rent. And, you know, sure, $15 a month can help some Manitobans, but for the vast majority of Manitobans, it does nothing. And government is about choices, budgets are about choices, and it says, what does this government value? Well, what this government values is 57%, $190 million of the gas tax holiday going to businesses and corporations. That's what it's telling Manitobans.
The honourable member for Agassiz.
Can the member tell us more about how this tax break has cost other services across our province?
Honourable member for Fort Garry.
Again, another excellent question. Of course, if we are giving up $340 million of revenue, it means that we don't have money for other services. And we talked a little bit about it. We're not spending on infrastructure. We're talking about childcare sector. We're not opening up new spaces because we don't have the money to do so. And of course, when it comes to housing, we're not investing in social housing. And by the lack of investing in these items, it ends up costing us more. Oftentimes, people who are in vulnerable living situations will use the justice system, the child welfare system, the healthcare system more. So there's a knock-on effect by not investing in Manitobans that ends up costing us more.
Member's time has expired.
Cycle.
The honourable member for St. Boniface.
My question for the member is, does he think having gas prices close to $2 per litre, like they were under the PCs, sustainable for an average Manitoba family budget?
The honourable member for Fort Garry.
So $340 million is a shockingly big budget amount. And you wouldn't even need to use all of it. You could have free transit for every Winnipegger, every Brandonite, every person who lives in Selkirk or in Thompson for multiple years for that kind of money. So transportation is a right. People have a right to be able to move within our society. It is efficient and it helps the economy. But giving them a coupon on gas doesn't do any of those things. So it's about choices. It's about putting the money where it would actually help Manitobans, not buying press releases for a one-off news story.
The honourable member for Selkirk.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and once again to the member for bringing this forward. Thank you very much. Now, we just seen in the bits of bill that there was legislation hidden in that bill to allow the government to raise fuel tax without any debate or any discussion from public. Why is that?
The honourable member for Fort Garry.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to like the answer. It's because the opposition was playing procedural games. If they hadn't done that, everybody knows if they hadn't done that, it would have gone to a hearing and there would have been representations and like that. And in fairness, both sides have been doing that for years, and that's just the culture of this place. But we're missing the point here, and the point is, are we giving Manitobans the help that they need, and are we helping all Manitobans? And the answer, unfortunately, is a resounding no.
The honourable member for St. Boniface.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question for the member is, what, in his opinion, has been more effective in lowering Manitoba's costs than saving 14 cents a litre at the pump?
The honourable member for Fort Garry.
So I think the substance of my debate is that this government has been very ineffective in lowering the costs of Manitoba, and has probably been one of the biggest failures of this government in the past year. The one policy that's been in place which we could expand, which they can't even take credit for, is the cap on milk prices. While other groceries have been skyrocketing, because we regulate the price of milk in Manitoba, that has not been affected by inflation, and Manitoba families have been able to get inexpensive milk here. That can be expanded to a whole host of staples, and we're just not doing that here, and there's no urgency from this government.
The honourable member for Portage-La Prairie.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Again, a question to the member from Fort Garry. Crime seems to have risen dramatically since we've seen this increase, or the gas tax here. How much money do you feel, or have you looked at what kind of money has been affected by people that are robbing grocery stores, us having to pay for more officers on the street, and that since the gas tax bill has been introduced? Thank you.
The honourable member for Fort Garry.
Well, you know, I am critical of this government of its cost of living policies. I wouldn't link the gas tax to crime rates. I think that would be unfair. But the larger issue, I think, is this, and it just shows that if we don't make the cost of living a priority for Manitoba, there are knock-on effects where people are having trouble affording groceries, and that leads to these petty crimes and nuisances, and then it affects small businesses and they shut down, and the larger effect on our community. And it's obviously nobody wants to see it go that way. So the gas tax holiday was never a solution. It was never designed to fix any of these things, and it hasn't fixed anything. Has it made things worse? Well,
Member's time has expired.
The deficit.
The honourable member for St. Boniface.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question for the member is, does he think small businesses should pay more in fuel taxes like they did under the PC's watch when the gas prices were close to $2 per litre?
The honourable member for Fort Garry.
So one of the principles of taxation, fair taxation, is the user pay principle. If you're going to use a polluting item, then you should pay for the costs of it. If you're using the roads, if you're going to pay for the wear and tear, you need to pay for it. Well, how we do that is through a gas tax. So you're responsible for repairs to that roadway. And it also provides an economic incentive to cut down and become more efficient in your business operation, so you're not paying that tax. So the reverse is true. If gas is cheaper, then you're going to drive more, which the only person I know who would be happy about that is our environment minister.
The time for questions has expired. The floor is open for debate. The honourable member for Waverley.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. So yeah, we know life has been getting more and more expensive for Manitobans, and we know the pressures that puts on families. And so I want to thank the member for bringing this forward, because it gives us an opportunity to talk about some of the affordability measures that we've brought forward, including the gas tax holiday. So, you know, when we showed up at people's door in the last election, we really made a promise to ease that burden that was felt under this former PC government for 7.5 years, and we followed through. And this is an important point to be made here, because this was an election promise, and something I heard over and over again at the door is that folks just wanted a government that they could trust. They'd say they were going to do something, and then they'd do it. And that's what we did with this gas tax holiday. So today, as I said, I'm here to talk a little bit more about how this has been a good affordability measure for Manitobans and why we did it. And we did it because we know how tough it's been for families here in the province, and we want to take some concrete action. And you know, I do have to say that it's been borderline sort of entertaining to see the opposition, as the member from Fort Garry answers these questions. They can't decide whether they want us to cut taxes, raise taxes. We're back and forth. I don't know really what they believe in anymore as a party. We don't know where they're at. There have been a lot of people in this province who have said how great this affordability measure has been, how much they appreciate the tax being cut. And so when we hear back from the PCs who have talked a big game over the years about how they like to get rid of taxes for people, saying that they want a tax brought back on people. I'm a little bit confused, but I digress, and I'll move on from the points. But it felt a little bit strange getting heckled about having a tax reduced from the PCs here. So listen, I'm not going to suggest either that this one affordability measure, though it's been a real success here in the province, is going to solve everything, right? So it's one step that we've taken to make a real difference in day-to-day life for Manitobans, for the average Manitoban, driving their children to school or to the rink, get groceries, whatever the case may be. And you know, for 7.5 years, as I mentioned, we saw prices rise and we saw no affordability measures that were really substantive brought forward by the PCs. You know, and ultimately, what I would say is, you know, every dollar that we save as Manitobans makes such a big difference. And that's especially for those that rely on their vehicles even more, like folks who live in rural Manitoba, for example. It's really important to a lot of them, and they've actually voiced that to us over and over again. We have heard that with the amount of driving that people do, you know, either in Steinbach or Winkler, all over this great province, they're really saving that money and they're feeling it. You know, and it wasn't just a short-term fix. We brought this in, we just extended it as well, and people have been giving us a lot of great feedback in that regard. And we know also, as this holiday season comes up, people are going to be driving around the province, they're going to be going to visit folks all over the place, and they're going to be saving money every time that they do that. And you know, it kind of reminds me of a story. So from last summer when I was canvassing before the election, I met this guy. We'll call him Steve for this story. Real salt of the earth sort of guy, has a little boy at home about the same age as my middle guy, and we were talking about a whole range of issues. And actually, he sort of identified more as a past PC voter. He supported the PCs. And so we chatted about healthcare and education. We talked about the VIC-ER, which is really important to a lot of people in our constituency in Waverley, and how it was closed under the PCs, and how disappointed he was that he had voted for somebody who went in and closed the ER that he was used to going to. He lived there in that neighborhood his whole life. And you know, we talked a little bit more about education and how all these cuts had been made. And they said he's got a few friends who are teachers. And they actually told him, you know, the inability to sort of plan budgets for the administration made things so difficult because they'd be cut one year, then they would get a little bit extra funding, they'd be cut again. And it just made teaching our kids that much more difficult. And he'd sort of told me the story of the sort of work that he was doing and how he was working so hard to try to get ahead and give his son a good life. And you know, this guy, he lived in an apartment, but he did a lot of driving, actually, for work. So we ended up, we had this conversation. He was talking about how he's trying to save up for a vacation for him and his son, even something small. And this past summer, I was back around canvassing again, getting out, listening to people in the community, and I bumped into Steve again. And we had a great conversation. And I mean, A, he talked about how much he appreciated everything our Premier's been doing and how excited he was. B, he told me for the first time in his life, he voted for the NDP, he gave me a vote. So I was really proud of that. And I think that it came back to the conversation that we had, the personal one-on-one conversation that was really meaningful, but then also what we promised to do in government. And guess what? We delivered on the things that we promised to do. And he said that to me. He said, you know, you talked about that gas tax and the holiday that you were going to give. I drive a ton for work, he reiterated, and I've been saving a ton of money. And guess what, David? Sorry, member for Waverley. He would have used my name. But for the sake of this story in this chamber, I'll say he said member for Waverley. I've been able to save enough for me and my son to get out to a hotel. And although it's not much, he's going to get to a hotel for 2 nights with his son with a water slide. And he was so excited about that. And he pointed directly to some of the cost-saving initiatives we've been taking, specifically the gas tax holiday. And that was honestly, it was one of those really great moments where I saw that government can make big decisions, follow through on promises, and make meaningful changes for Manitobans. And you know, those Manitobans, they are from all across this province. And particularly, we've heard from people up north too, do that extra driving, who need that extra help. And they've been very much appreciative. So, as I said, and I want to be totally upfront. We've been talking a lot about all of the great things that our government has been trying to get done and have followed through on. And we know that there's more to do. You know, we've hired 873 new healthcare workers, net new, which is incredible. But there's more work to be done, and we're doing that hard work. You know, we've stabilized funding for the education system, created a universal nutrition program for kids. Very exciting work, but there's more to do. And so when we talk about a gas tax holiday, incredibly exciting. It's worked really well. People are really appreciative. It's brought down inflation in our province. We actually have some of the lowest inflation numbers across Canada. But we also know that there's more to do, and we are doing that work. But we're also incredibly proud of what we've done so far, and we're proud of that because we've heard from Manitobans who are appreciating the work that we're doing. So we're not going to stop here, as I'm saying. We're going to keep on working to make life more affordable, to lower costs, to ensure that, you know, every single Manitoban, from Waverley to Wolseley to Russell, is going to be saving money and feeling like their government is speaking for them. So I do want to say just thank you to Manitobans for standing with us over this last year and for believing in the work we're doing and for continuing to collaborate and work with us in such a productive way. You know, we'll keep on moving forward one step at a time, and we are going to build a stronger Manitoba. And this really, again, goes back to that constituent I was talking to. And I am genuinely just so proud to be able to represent the wonderful people of Waverley. And I promise to you all that I will continue to listen to what you have to say, to take in your suggestions and to bring them to the table in caucus and government. And we're going to keep on building a Manitoba that is stronger and has an even brighter future for everybody. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk.
Yay!
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Very happy to rise today and speak on this information that's been brought forward. This should really be just called the affordability for Manitobans. Under the PC government, I watched over and over again as the previous Sellinger government made things more difficult. And with changes by the PC government, I seen paychecks go up for employees that work for me. Paychecks rise without an increase in their wages. And those paychecks went up because the PC government took true affordability for all Manitobans very seriously. They looked at long-term, permanent changes that happened to the basic deductions. They increased them from just under $9,000, pardon me, just under $10,000 to $15,000. And that indexed with inflation. So if a person is at an organization that can't afford to give a raise, they would have got one automatically by the PC government, recognizing that their take-home pay matters, to make sure that when it comes to supporting their own families and enjoying life, that it matters how much money they take home. But it didn't stop there. They made sure it indexed with inflation. So as people were working their way through the pandemic and recovering as an organization and started bringing employees back to work, that they might not have had the funds to truly recognize the employees who deserved it, but the tax rates were indexing, so there was some more money there. And that allowed companies, such as the companies that I represented, the ability to bring more people to work, to invest in better equipment for the employees, to have better training programs. So all affordability, long-term, matters to everybody in Manitoba. Now, the member from Waverley gave this really cute story on how somebody saved a few pennies per liter, and then they went out and they're able to go out and go on a holiday. It reminds me of the story where somebody traded a paperclip for a bicycle. I mean, these stories are wonderful, but I've never met anybody who's actually done that. I take a look at when it comes to affordability on what people can actually afford moving forward, permanently, something they can count on. It's not, oh, here's a few pennies today, but we might take it away tomorrow. But no, you get to keep it a little longer. And no, we might take it away. Well, we'll talk about it again. I mean, give people something they can hold on to, something tangible, something they can expect, something that we haven't seen from this government. We haven't seen real affordability. When I started getting involved in politics, it was because the NDP government of the time was taking from the people of Manitoba. I watched as there was a mass exodus of trained people in the trades leaving our province, going for greener pastures, some of them in Alberta, some of them into the US. It made it difficult to hire people of skilled trades. When you take a look at what's going to make our province strong, is making sure that people can afford to live here. That was an attraction at one time. People left Ontario, people left BC, heading for Manitoba because it was affordable. And the 7.5 years of the PC government, I've seen sweeping changes in the amount of people that were applying in my organization. And I believe in the employees. It's the employees of the company that truly make the company. It's the recommendations I get afterwards from those customers that say, well, you had a great team. Without affordability, those employees would not be at my organization. They would not be representing that company on a daily basis, going forward and putting their best foot forward and representing the company with the utmost respect and best skills that they could show. We've seen cuts to justice, childcare, health, transportation. We've seen roads crumbling. In Selkirk, the bridge has waves on it. People drive across this narrow, skinny bridge, and they strike mirrors almost daily. It's a running joke that this hasn't been addressed sooner. So affordability, investing in people, is investing in all those things. If you want to give affordability measures at the pump, that's great, but you can't do it at the sacrifice of the things that matter in our province. You can't take away childcare spaces. You can't take away 9 new schools because you want to dangle a carrot out there for somebody. You want to show somebody that you can fulfill a promise while neglecting the importance of everything else for the province. You take a look at what is the actual savings that people are getting. Well, that's very dependent on who you are. It depends on the number of miles you drive, the type of vehicle that you fuel up. It depends on your commuting ability, if you're picking people up or if you're carpooling. It depends on if you have a license or not. It also does nothing for people who use transit. We have to look at affordability for every single person, but not just a short-term reward, but a long-term goal. You have to let people know that Manitoba is a province to establish roots, to grow, that the government understands the importance of you staying here, the importance of you being educated here, the importance of you buying a home here, to make sure that things are affordable, that the roads and infrastructure are taken care of, that the schools you attend are profitable and not looking at huge deficits in their budget, that private enterprise can thrive, that families have opportunities. And as a member for Fort Garry said, housing affordability is a tremendous issue. It's an issue in the area of Selkirk that I represent. It's an issue in Winnipeg. It's an issue all across this province. Rent is quickly surpassing the amount that you would pay on a mortgage, which prevents people from saving for the down payment on a mortgage. The extenuating cost of once you get a home is incredible. I was very fortunate that my children grasped the value of hard work at a very young age. And they were able to save money. They worked very, very hard in their teens. And as they approached adulthood, they had dreams and ambitions. My daughter, at 21 years old, bought her first house. She's currently in it. It was a house that I was able to purchase, renovate, and I put up for sale, and she said, I would like to buy that house. So we took it off the market and we sold it to her. I'm very proud of the work that I did in that house, and I'm very proud of my daughter for having the foresight to see the importance of purchasing a home at a young age. At 19 years old, my son bought his first house, but it wasn't for him to live in. It was for a rental property. And we held the rent low. We want it to be affordable for people to come there. When you have people in your community and they stay in your community, they do well. A couple of years later, my son sold that house to me, and he bought his first residence at 21 years old. He has since sold that one and bought his second residence, a 4-acre piece of property in the country. And he did that because of hard work, and he continually does that. So we really need to direct ourselves to focus on affordability for the long term. Not short-term gains, but long-term needs. Thank you.
The honourable member for Riel.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Thank you to the member opposite for providing an opportunity to speak about our gas tax holiday. The gas tax holiday was a very important measure, an affordability measure, a commitment that we campaigned on, a commitment that I might add that member for Fort Garry was happy to campaign on, that member was happy to benefit from. The gas tax holiday commitment of eliminating 14 cents per litre for all Manitobans was a concrete action that we could take to ensure Manitobans across our province have a little bit more money in their pocket. It was during a time of high inflation, a time that I remind the House where inflation was hovering not very long ago at 6, 7, 8%. So thank goodness Manitobans elected a government that's on their side. The members on this side of the House recognize that governments can't do everything. Governments can't control every cost. They can't take on every burden. However, governments can do some things, And when inflation is high and interest rates are spiking and costs are going up, these are the things that government should be taking on, where governments can make a difference. Individuals are not able to control inflation. Individuals are not able to control all the costs impacting their families, and it is government that can do that. And so our government responded. We responded by pulling one of the few levers that we had at our disposal to make life directly more affordable for Manitobans. We responded by addressing a cost that affects people trying to get to work. We responded by addressing a cost that has a sizable impact on people in rural areas and people in the north. So what was the result of the gas tax holiday? Manitoba has had some of the lowest inflation month after month after month across the country. In fact, our inflation this past month in September is half of what the inflation is nationwide. This lower inflation helps all Manitobans. This is especially after 7.5 years of PC inaction, 7.5 years where the PCs did not make an impact on helping everyday Manitobans. Our approach is making it easier for Manitoba families. Our approach is helping them catch up, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and that's why Manitobans continue to save 14 cents a litre each time that they fill up at the pump until December 31st. This is helping Manitoba families thrive, and it's helping keep Manitoba an affordable place to live. So given that, what are Manitobans saying about the gas tax holiday? Overwhelmingly, they support the gas tax holiday. In fact, a recent survey said 71% support it. It's pretty rare to hear that level of support, and so I appreciate that Manitobans are on board with what we're doing, with making life more affordable. Our approach is ensuring that every Manitoban can afford the things that they need for their families while costs are high. While interest rates are starting to come down, they're not quite at the level where everyday Manitobans can feel relief. And we're going to continue working for Manitobans and working for an affordable Manitoba each and every day. Some of the other things that we've done, we brought in 21 different ways, new ways for families to save in Budget 2024. And that includes a rebate on electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids. Owning an electric vehicle can help Manitobans budget, saves them on gas, and on the maintenance costs. This is part of our multi-pronged approach that we're taking to lower costs for Manitobans. We're also working with Manitoba Hydro to increase the availability and reliability of public electric vehicle chargers. And this is just a few of the ways that we're making it easier for Manitobans to make climate-friendly choices. And these initiatives help them do just that. The best way that we're going to get people to pick the climate-friendly option is by ensuring it's affordable. I do find this resolution to be a little peculiar. Now, to be clear, all Manitobans can invest in whatever companies that they would like. We live in a free market. Folks can purchase shares in any company that they would like. But what I find incongruent is the fact that the member opposite proposing this resolution is against the gas tax holiday that provides a direct affordability measure for everyday Manitobans is at the same time owning shares in multiple oil and gas companies. This seems strange to me, but I'll leave it to the member for Fort Garry to do the mental gymnastics to make it make sense. Regardless, Manitobans should know that they have a government on their side. Manitobans should know that they have a team that is working each and every day to make life more affordable for them and their families. We're proud of the 21 different ways we're making life more affordable in Budget 2024, and we are going to continue to ensure Manitoba is an affordable place to live. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Portage La Prairie.
Thank you so much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I thought that I needed to get up and address this information as being the agriculture critic and seeing what people in the agriculture industry are going through, as well as people that rely on our agriculture industry are going through as well too. Again, we hear from the other side about this being for all Manitobans, but gas tax saving is not for all Manitobans. I think about the people that are standing outside the grocery stores early on Monday mornings, and it's not with their cars, it's by themselves, it's with their kids in tow, because it's when they discount the price of stuff that's out of date and meat that's out of date, so that the people that do not have vehicles, do not have a means to get there, are able to afford things like groceries. So this is not for all Manitobans out there. Let's be clear. And when it comes to taxpayers in Manitoba, I say this over and over again. There's only one, and that's all of us. So we have to remember on things like that too. When we talk about it, and I asked the member from Fort Garry about this, is what the rate of crime is costing us right now with the amount of extra police service that have to be put into place because of the theft that's going on, because people aren't able to eat. They can't afford to eat out there. Again, this is a short-term plan, and it's going to cause a lot of long-term pain. And we're seeing that in infrastructure, or lack thereof, of work that's being done in infrastructure. As I talk again about the farmers in my area, a lot of them have to use a road north of Portage La Prairie, 227, that not only affects my constituents, but also the member from Lakeside, but it's also affecting the transportation routes for all of Canada when it's coming through, because this is 227 highway is a shorter route to get to number 16 highway when they're leaving places like Winnipeg or Centerport, because of the amount of carbon tax that these trucking companies and that are having to pay, that this government across the way decides to back up every day. When we talk about the farmers, again too, in Manitoba, how they're affected by this. And again, when I say not all Manitobans, that's terrific if they're saving, a small amount of money per month. But if we want to look for some real long-term gain, again, we have to ask, how do these farmers feel about paying $7,000 and $8,000 per month in carbon tax? How do these farmers feel that are paying on a loaf of bread up to 11 times on carbon tax? How can they afford to live? How can they afford to make money? How about the gentleman in Portage La Prairie that called for a pizza to be delivered, and he robbed the driver, not of his vehicle, but of the food? because he can't afford to feed himself. He has no vehicle, so how does he make it to the grocery store? So please, I want to ask this question on the record. How are all Manitobans being affected in a positive way on this gas tax? They're not. They're not even a little bit being looked after on that. This weekend in Portage La Prairie, we had a free giveaway of potatoes. And there was tens of thousands of pounds of potatoes. The only question that was asked about it is, how do we get there? Is it fair that somebody with a vehicle or a truck can load his truck up with those free potatoes, or can load his trunk up with free potatoes, but the people that really need the savings can't afford it? So this is not a program for all Manitobans. It's a short-term gain. We here on this side of the aisle like to look to the future. We want to know, and we want to work with people so that they can look at tax savings over a yearly basis or for years, not to be looking at what a short-term gain is, so that we can talk about all the time about the inflation level. Well, one thing about inflation that we need to know is, are we spending any money, or is that why our inflation level has been driven to this low period that we have right now? This is not real affordability for all. When we see the people that are lining up at the grocery stores to buy that cheap meat, or who are walking with their kids out to get the free potatoes, they've got their kids with them because there's not enough daycare space out there for them. When we as this conservative government looked at things, we look at real savings, like lowering the PST back to 7% from when the NDP had raised it to 8%. 7 years. We indexed and increased the basic personal amount from $9,100 in 2015 to $15,000 in 2023, so that all Manitobans pay less, not just certain Manitobans.
Yes. We don't pick winners and losers. Yep, we don't pick winners.
We oppose the Trudeau Liberal carbon tax increase on small business owners. Again, why are they having to pay this? Again, this government across the way said this is for all Manitobans. No, it's for a select few Manitobans.
Right. Winners and losers.
They just continue to pick winners and losers. If we want to be a real prosperous province, we need to be looking at everyone to have that opportunity. We've increased the minimum wage from $11 in 2015 to where it is now at $15.80 in 2024, ensuring indexing would happen every year to keep up with inflation. $94 million investment in new childcare spaces with a focus on rural and northern Manitobans. This government across decides what's good and what's bad. When the government across the way is offered a $5 million gift, they say, no, we don't want that. No, we'd rather put that on the back of Manitobans. How is that ever fair? We have to continue to think about everybody out there. When we talk about the personal exemptions, fuel tax in Manitoba is 14 cents a liter and generates $350 million annually in revenue for provincial governments. If we're having to drive on these roads where the people that have been able to save 14 cents have done, we have to look at repairing those roads. If we're adding way more traffic onto the roads in order to save gas prices. What's it costing us realistically for the people that need it most? This is not a Manitoba for all. This is a Manitoba only for a single few.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker.
Good job, eh? Good job.
Order. When this matter is again before the House, debate will be open. The hour being 12 p.m., the House is recessed and stands recessed until 1:30 p.m.